Black Maid was in labor. Her billionaire husband texted, "Me or the baby?" What she chose will shock you, his eyebrow raised. The other staff had warned her about his temper, his impossible standards, his habit of firing people for breathing too loud. But standing there in his marble foyer, Rochelle saw something else entirely. A man who owned everything but enjoyed nothing. Have you ever walked into a space where you clearly didn't belong but refused to shrink? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. He stood at the foot of her hospital bed, wearing a $6,000 Armani suit while she screamed in labor. Her phone lit up with a message from him. Me or the baby? The doctor had just said there were complications. Only one might make it. And now, the man who claimed to love her was asking her to choose. Her answer? It changed both their lives forever, and no one saw it coming. What happens when the person you trust most becomes your worst nightmare? Have you ever given everything to someone who demanded even more? Have you watched love turn into control? Drop a comment right now if you've ever felt trapped by someone who was supposed to protect you. This is about a woman who traded her entire world for a man's promise, only to discover his love came with conditions. Rochelle Evans thought she was marrying her prince. Instead, she married a man who would force her to choose between her life and her babies in a delivery room. Her answer in that moment, it destroyed his empire and saved her soul. But here's what nobody talks about. How does a black housemaid from Savannah catch a white billionaire's heart? And why would he throw it all away the second she got pregnant? The truth is darker than any fairy tale, messier than any romance novel, and more shocking than anything you've seen on reality TV. Hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell, because this story will show you exactly why some fairy tales end in courtrooms, not castles. Like this video if you're ready for a story that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about love, money, and power. Share this with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the best choice is the hardest one. And comment below, what would you do if someone forced you to choose between yourself and your child? To understand how we got to that hospital room, I need to take you back 2 years earlier to a lakefront mansion in Georgia, where a single mother with nothing was about to meet a billionaire with everything. What happened next? Nobody could have predicted it. Not even them. She walked into his mansion like she owned it. Not because she was bold, but because she'd learned that respect isn't given, it's taken. Rochelle Evans had cleaned enough rich people's houses to know the rules. Keep your head down. Don't touch anything expensive. Speak only when spoken to. But when she stepped into Bradley Whitmore's Lake Oconee estate that Tuesday morning in June 2016, something was different. Maybe it was the way the Georgia sun hit those marble floors like liquid gold. Maybe it was knowing her 7-year-old daughter Destiny needed new school clothes. Or maybe she was just tired of pretending to be invisible. The house screamed money, the kind that came from generations of having it, not earning it. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen fireworks. Oil paintings worth more than most people's homes lined the walls. But Rochelle's worn sneakers moved across those floors without hesitation. She'd learned something other housekeepers hadn't. Wealthy people respected confidence more than submission. "You're the new girl," a voice said behind her. She turned to find Bradley Whitmore himself standing in the doorway. 6'2", silver hair, wearing a suit that probably cost more than she made in 3 months. The local papers called him a real estate king. The gossip blogs called him Georgia's most eligible bachelor since his divorce. But right now, he just looked lonely. "I'm the new woman," she corrected, meeting his eyes. Rochelle Evans. Most employers would have bristled. Bradley Whitmore laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even him. "Touché. I know who you are, Mr. Whitmore. Question is, do you know why I'm here?" His eyebrow raised. The other staff had warned her about his temper, his impossible standards, his habit of firing people for breathing too loud. But standing there in his marble foyer, Rochelle saw something else entirely. A man who owned everything but enjoyed nothing. "Enlighten me," he said. "I'm here to clean your house, not stroke your ego. I've got a daughter to feed and bills to pay." You've got dust on your $1 million furniture and nobody brave enough to tell you your coffee maker needs descaling. We both need something. The difference is I'm honest about it. For a moment, the only sound was the grandfather clock ticking in the corner. Then Bradley Whitmore did something his previous housekeepers had never seen. He smiled. Not the practice smile he gave reporters or business partners. A real smile that reached his eyes. "When can you start?" he asked. "I already did," Rochelle replied, pulling her cleaning supplies from her bag. He watched her work from his office window that first day. She moved through a space like she belonged there, humming old R&B songs while she polished his tables. When she accidentally knocked over his $10,000 crystal decanter, a wedding gift from his ex-wife that he'd kept out of spite, his first instinct was rage. But when the glass shattered across his marble floor, something shattered in him too. "Finally," he said, walking over to where she stood frozen. "Someone who treats my things like things." She had no idea that laugh would cost her everything. Have you ever walked into a space where you clearly didn't belong but refused to shrink? Tell me in the comments about a time you stood your ground when everyone expected you to bow down. And if this story is already hitting different, smash that like button. We're just getting started. He could buy anything in the world except the one thing he wanted most, a conversation with someone who didn't want his money. 3 weeks into the job, Bradley Whitmore broke his own rule about fraternizing with staff. It started innocent enough, offering Rochelle coffee while she cleaned his office. But coffee turned into conversation, and conversation turned into something neither of them had expected. "You don't ask me for anything," he said one Thursday afternoon, watching her dust his bookshelf with the same care she'd give precious artifacts. "Should I?" Rochelle replied without turning around. "Everyone else does. Extra hours, advances on their pay, recommendations for their cousins. Something." She finally faced him, cloth still in her hand. "Maybe that says more about how you treat people than what they want from you." The lake stretched out like black silk beyond his office windows, but neither of them was looking at the view. They were discovering that real connection felt like finding water in a desert. Rare, necessary, and impossible to ignore. "Tell me about your daughter," he said, settling into his chair like he had all the time in the world. Most employers asked about Destiny as a formality, making sure she wouldn't interfere with work schedules. Bradley asked like he actually wanted to know. "She's 7, smart as a whip, wants to be a doctor so she can fix people who are broken." Rochelle's voice softened the way it always did when she talked about her child. "She thinks everyone deserves to be whole." Sounds like her mother. Her mother knows better. Some things stay broken no matter how much you want to fix them. Bradley leaned forward. "Such as arts, trust, men who promise forever and disappear before breakfast." The honesty hung between them like a challenge. Most women in his orbit painted themselves in soft pastels. Available, agreeable, carefully curated. Rochelle presented herself in bold strokes. Complicated, independent, beautifully flawed. "You talk to me like I'm just a person," he said finally. "That's because you are. Rich doesn't change that." But even as she said it, Rochelle felt the invisible shift in the room. The way his eyes lingered on her hands. The way her pulse quickened when he laughed. The way ordinary conversation suddenly felt loaded with possibility. "What's her name?" he asked softly, like he was asking permission to care. "Destiny. Her name is Destiny." Something changed in his expression. Not judgment, but genuine interest. Not the calculating look of a man measuring burden, but the curious gaze of someone discovering something unexpected. That's a big name for a little girl. She's got big dreams. Bigger than this place, bigger than. Rochelle gestured around the mansion. All this. What about her mother's dreams? The question caught her off guard. When was the last time anyone had asked about her dreams? Her wants? Her hopes beyond survival and stability? Her mother's dreams are about making sure Destiny never has to clean someone else's house to put food on the table. That's not what I asked. Their eyes met across the room, and for the first time in months, Rochelle felt seen. Not as a single mother, not as hired help, not as someone's charity case. As a woman with her own desires, her own complexity, her own worth. When was the last time someone saw the real you beneath your circumstances? Drop a heart in the comments if you felt truly seen by someone unexpected. And hit that subscribe button because what happens next changes everything for both of them. There are invisible lines drawn around billionaires, lines that separate their world from yours. She was about to discover what happens when you step across them. The dinner invitation came on a Friday, casual as asking about the weather. Stay tonight. After you finish, I'll cook. Rochelle paused, sprayed bottle halfway to the mirror she was cleaning. You cook. Badly, but with enthusiasm. She should have said no. Should have remembered the first rule of working for wealthy men. Keep it professional, keep it distant, keep it safe. Instead, she found herself nodding. I need to pick up Destiny from my neighbors. Bring her. 2 words that shifted everything. Bring her. Like her daughter wasn't an inconvenience or complication. Like family was welcome in his world. The dining room table could seat 20, but they sat at the kitchen island like normal people sharing takeout. Bradley had indeed cooked, if you could call burning pasta and ordering pizza from the most expensive restaurant in town cooking. But watching him try, seeing him laugh at his own failures, made something warm unfurl in Rochelle's chest. Destiny charmed him completely. She ate her pizza with careful precision, asked about the lake, and told him matter-of-factly that his house was too big for just one person. You're right, he said seriously. It gets lonely. That's why you need a family, Destiny announced. Families make houses feel like homes. After Destiny fell asleep on his couch, exhausted from exploring the mansion's many rooms, Bradley and Rochelle found themselves alone with wine and honest conversation. She's incredible, he said, watching Destiny sleep. You've done an amazing job. I've done my best. It hasn't always been enough. It's been everything. She's confident, kind, curious. That doesn't happen by accident. The compliment hit deeper than it should have. Rochelle had spent 7 years doubting every parenting decision, wondering if love was enough when money was scarce. You make me remember what it feels like to want something money can't buy, Bradley said, voice dropping to something more intimate. What's that? Connection. Real conversation. Someone who sees me, not my bank account. They were sitting closer now, the space between them charged with electricity. Rochelle could smell his cologne, see the flecks of gold in his hazel eyes, feel the heat radiating from his body. This is dangerous, she whispered. Good, he replied, leaning closer. I'm tired of playing it safe. His hand reached up to touch her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. She should have pulled away, should have remembered all the reasons this was impossible. Instead, she leaned into his touch. I have to go, she said, but made no move to leave. I know, this can't happen. Why not? Because you're you, and I'm me, and people like us don't. Don't what? Don't deserve happiness? Don't deserve each other? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and danger in equal measure. When he walked her to the door, Destiny sleeping in his arms like she belonged there, the space between them crackled with unspoken promises. This changes things, Rochelle said. Everything worth having changes things. Have you ever been tempted by something you knew was dangerous? Something that could change your life forever? Tell me in the comments about a time you had to choose between safe and spectacular. And smash that subscribe button because next week we find out what happens when their secret gets out and the whole town starts talking. She came to work the next morning expecting awkwardness. What she found was a man who had already made his decision about her. The gift was waiting on the kitchen counter when Rochelle arrived Monday morning. Not jewelry or flowers. Those would have been easy to refuse. Instead, she found a receipt from the expensive toy store downtown and a note in Bradley's handwriting. Every future doctor needs proper equipment. B. In the living room, a complete children's medical kit waited. Stethoscope, toy x-ray machine, doctor's coat in Destiny's size. The kind of elaborate playset that cost more than Rochelle made in a month. Her first instinct was anger. I'm not for sale, she said when she found him in his office, the receipt clutched in her hand like evidence. Bradley looked up from his laptop, genuinely confused. I never said you were. Then what's this? She waved the receipt. Expensive gifts for my daughter? What's next? Private school tuition? A new car? A house with your name on the deed? He closed the laptop, giving her his full attention. It's a gift for a 7-year-old who wants to be a doctor. Nothing more, nothing less. Nothing's ever that simple with men like you. Men like me? His voice carried an edge now. Rich men, powerful men, men who think everything has a price, including people. Bradley stood, moving around the desk, until he was close enough to see the hurt beneath her anger. You're right. Most men like me do think that way. But I'm not trying to buy you, Rochelle. I'm trying to show you that someone sees your daughter's dreams as valuable. Someone believes she can achieve them. The sincerity in his voice almost broke her resolve. Almost. I've been taking care of myself and my daughter for 7 years. I know you don't need anything from me. That's exactly why I want to give it to you. The logic was circular, frustrating, and somehow perfect. He wanted to give precisely because she didn't ask. Wanted to help because she didn't expect it. This scares me, she admitted. Good things should scare you a little. Otherwise, how do you know they're worth having? That evening, watching Destiny play doctor with her new medical kit, Rochelle felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. Her daughter's joy was infectious, her excitement genuine. And when Destiny insisted on examining Bradley, who'd stayed for dinner again, listening to his heartbeat with intense concentration, Rochelle saw something that terrified her more than any expensive gift. She saw them as a family. Mommy, his heart beats really fast, Destiny announced seriously. I think he might be excited about something. Bradley's eyes met Rochelle's over her daughter's head. Yeah, he said softly. I think he is. Later, after Destiny was in bed, they stood in the kitchen washing dishes like a married couple. Their hands touched, reaching for the same plate, and neither pulled away. I haven't felt like this in a long time, Bradley said. Felt like what? Like I have something worth protecting. Something worth fighting for. The next morning, Rochelle's phone exploded with calls before she was fully awake. Neighbor after neighbor, friend after friend, all asking the same question. Girl, is that you on the front page of the Savannah Herald? What's the difference between generosity and control? Between gifts and strings attached? Tell me in the comments where you draw the line. And hit that notification bell, because next week, privacy becomes a luxury only rich people can afford, and Rochelle's about to learn that lesson the hard way. Privacy is a luxury only rich men can afford. She was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The photo on the front page of the Savannah Herald showed them leaving his house together. Destiny skipping between them, Bradley's hand on Rochelle's lower back, all three of them laughing about something. The headline read, Billionaire's New Love. Local housekeeper catches real estate king's eye. Rochelle stared at the newspaper in her neighbor's kitchen, coffee growing cold in her hands. Mrs. Patterson, who'd been watching Destiny since she was 3, shook her head with a mixture of concern and fascination. Child, you didn't tell me you were dating that man. That white man with all that money.
We're not. Rochelle started, then stopped. What exactly were they? Friends? Employer and employee? Something more dangerous than either? Her phone buzzed with text after text. Some supportive, others not so much. The worst came from her own cousin. Hope that money's worth selling out for. By noon, news vans had found her apartment complex. Reporters with perfect teeth and expensive clothes stood outside her door, asking questions that reduced her to a stereotype. Miss Evans, how long have you been involved with Mr. Whitmore? Is it true you're pregnant? What do you say to people who call you a gold digger? That last question stopped her cold. Gold digger. Like she planned this. Like she'd schemed her way into his life instead of just trying to clean his house and pay her bills. She was trapped inside her own home when Bradley's car pulled up. The reporter's energy shifted immediately. Now, they had the real prize. The billionaire himself stepping out of his Bentley like he owned the whole block. He walked through them like they were invisible, straight to her door. When she opened it, his eyes swept her face with concern. Are you okay? No, I'm really not. He stepped inside, and immediately her small apartment felt smaller. Not because of his height or presence, but because she could suddenly see it through the reporter's eyes. Secondhand furniture, discount store decorations, everything that screamed different worlds. We need to talk, he said. Yeah, we do. That's when he did something that changed everything. Instead of apologizing for the attention or promising to make it go away, Bradley Whitmore made a choice that would define both their futures. I'm going to hold a press conference, he said, tomorrow, and I want you there with me. What? They're going to write the story anyway. At least this way, we control the narrative. We? The word felt foreign in her mouth. Yes. We. Because this isn't just happening to you. It's happening to us. That afternoon, while Destiny played with her medical kit, Rochelle watched Bradley pace her living room like a caged animal. He looked different in her space, less polished, more human. His expensive shirt was wrinkled, his perfect hair messed from running his hands through it. I should have protected you better, he said. Should have known this would happen. How could you have known? I didn't even know there was anything to protect. He stopped pacing, fixed her with a look that made her stomach flip. There's been something to protect since the first day you walked into my house and treated me like a person instead of a paycheck. The press conference was scheduled for the next day. As they planned what to say, how to handle the questions, Rochelle realized they were crossing another line, from private connection to public statement. Are you ready for this? Bradley asked as the news vans multiplied outside her window. No, but I'm tired of hiding. Have you ever been judged for who you loved? How did you handle being reduced to gossip and assumptions? Share your experience in the comments. And subscribe because tomorrow, their press conference reveals a secret that will shock everyone, including them. Every man has a past that shaped him, but some pasts have teeth that bite back when you least expect it. The press conference was scheduled for 2 p.m. At 1:30, sitting in his car outside the hotel, Bradley dropped a bomb that changed everything. There's something I need to tell you before we go in there. Something about my first marriage. Rochelle's stomach dropped. Okay, the reporters are going to ask. They probably already know. Sarah didn't just leave me. She fled. Got a restraining order. Said I was controlling. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Rochelle felt the world tilt slightly. Were you? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, yeah, I was. Honesty. Raw, uncomfortable, devastating honesty. In a world where most men made excuses, Bradley Whitmore gave her the truth. I monitored her phone, controlled her money, made decisions about her life without asking. I told myself it was protection, but he looked at Rochelle with eyes full of regret. It was prison. I turned love into a cage, and when she finally broke free, I blamed her for running instead of myself for building the bars. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what you're walking into, who you're walking into it with. They missed the press conference. Instead, they went back to his house, where Bradley spent 3 hours telling her everything. The fights that escalated into silent treatments. The way he'd isolated Sarah from her friends, convinced her she needed his guidance for everything. How he'd used his wealth like a weapon, making her dependent until she forgot she'd ever been strong. I went to therapy after she left. Anger management. Learned some hard truths about myself. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. I'm not that man anymore, but he's still inside me. Still part of my story. Most women would have run. Should have run. Instead, Rochelle moved closer. Show me, she said. What? Show me you're different. Show me you can let someone else lead. What happened next was the most intense moment of both their lives. Rochelle took control. Not just physically, but emotionally. She pushed him into his chair, straddled his lap, and made him prove every word he'd just said. Tell me what you want, she demanded. You. Just you. Then stop trying to manage me. Stop trying to protect me. Let me choose you because I want to, not because you've convinced me I need to. His hands gripped the leather chair arms as she kissed him with fierce intention. Every touch was a question. Can you surrender? Can you trust? Can you love without controlling? Is this okay? He whispered against her neck. Yes, she breathed, surprised by how much she meant it. When they made love that night, it wasn't the careful, polite encounter she'd expected. It was raw, honest, and completely equal. He let her set the pace, let her decide what felt good, let her be in charge of her own pleasure. Afterward, lying in his massive bed with the Georgia moonlight streaming through the windows, Rochelle felt something she hadn't experienced in years: complete trust. "I'm falling for you," she said into the darkness. "I already fell. Question is whether you're going to catch me or let me crash." 2 weeks later, staring at the pregnancy test in his bathroom, Rochelle knew their real test was just beginning. But when she came out to tell him, his expression wasn't joy. It was terror. "Are you sure it's mine?" The words hit her like ice water. Because some fears run deeper than love. Some insecurities are stronger than growth. And sometimes, the man you think has changed is just better at hiding who he really is. Can people really change, or do they just get better at hiding who they are? What would you do if someone's past came back to test your present? Comment below with your thoughts, and hit that subscribe button, because next week, trust dies in a single sentence, and resurrection isn't guaranteed. Trust dies in a single sentence, and resurrection isn't guaranteed, even with apologies. The pregnancy test fell from Rochelle's shaking hands, 2 pink lines confirming what her body already knew. She should have felt joy, excitement, the warm glow of creating life with someone she loved. Instead, staring at those lines, she felt fear. Not because she didn't want the baby, but because of how Bradley might react. She found him in his office, working late, as usual. The man who'd been so gentle with her just hours before now looked like the cold businessman the newspapers wrote about. "Bradley." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "We need to talk." He looked up from his laptop, and for a second, she saw warmth in his eyes. Then she held up the pregnancy test, and everything changed. The color drained from his face. Not happiness, not excitement. "Pure unadulterated panic." "You're pregnant." "Yes." He stared at the test like it was evidence in a crime he didn't commit. The silence stretched between them, growing heavier with each passing second. Then came the question that shattered everything. "Are you sure it's mine?" The words hung in the air like poison. Rochelle felt something inside her chest actually break, not metaphorically, but physically, like her heart was made of glass and he'd just thrown a stone. "What did you say?" "I'm just asking. We've only been together a few weeks and—" "Get out." "Rochelle, wait." "I said get out. Out of this room, out of my sight, out of my life." He stood up, hands raised like she was pointing a gun at him. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did. You meant exactly what you said. You think I'm some lying, scheming woman who trapped you with another man's baby." Her voice was deadly calm now, which scared her more than screaming would have. "That's not. If you have to ask, then you don't know me at all. And if you don't know me after everything we've shared, then you never knew me." The man who'd just made love to her with such tenderness was now looking at her like a stranger. Worse, like a threat. "I've been burned before," he said weakly. "So have I. But I didn't let my past poison my present." She walked past him toward the door, but his voice stopped her. "Where are you going?" "Home. To figure out how to raise this baby alone. Since that's clearly what you expect anyway." "Rochelle, please. Let's talk about this." She turned back, and he flinched at the look on her face. "Talk about what? Whether your baby is actually your baby, whether I'm a liar, or just a slut. Which conversation would you prefer?" "That's not fair." "Fair." The word came out like a laugh, but there was no humor in it. "You want to talk about fair?" "Fair would have been trusting the woman you claim to love. Fair would have been celebrating instead of interrogating. Fair would have been remembering that I'm the same person who made you dinner last night and fell asleep in your arms." She left him standing in his office, looking like his world had just collapsed. Good. He just collapsed hers. The drive back to her apartment was a blur of tears and rage. By the time she got home, her phone was buzzing with texts from him. Apologies, explanations, promises to do better. She deleted them all without reading past the first line. The next morning, she found an envelope slipped under her door. Not money this time. She would have burned money. It was a handwritten letter, 3 pages of his careful script explaining his fears, his past, his desperate need for her forgiveness. The last line made her sink to the floor. "I'm not asking for anything. I just need to know if you regret it." Her answer would change everything. How do you rebuild trust after it's been shattered by doubt? Is some damage too deep to heal? Tell me in the comments what you would have done in her position. and subscribe because her answer will surprise everyone, including herself. She married him anyway, not because she forgave him, but because she believed in the man he could become. The letter sat on her kitchen table for 3 days. Rochelle read it so many times she had parts memorized. His explanation of why doubt was his first instinct. His detailed account of the therapy sessions after his divorce. His promise to trust her completely if she'd just give him another chance. But it was the last paragraph that broke her resolve. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But this baby, our baby, deserve a father who fights for his family instead of running from it. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to let me prove I can be the man you both need. When she called him, he answered on the first ring. I want a prenatal paternity test, she said without preamble. Rochelle, not because I have anything to prove, but because you need proof to trust me. And this baby needs a father who's all in, not half out the door. The test results came back exactly as she knew they would. 99.9% match. Bradley stared at the paper like it contained the secrets of the universe. I'm sorry, he said. And for the first time since the night in his office, she believed him. Sorry doesn't fix this. Then tell me what does. Time. And proof that you can choose trust over fear. The proposal came 2 weeks later. Not in some fancy restaurant or on a beach at sunset. In her apartment, with Destiny asleep on the couch and Chinese takeout getting cold on the table. Marry me, he said simply. Why? Because I love you. Because I want to build a family with you. Because I want to spend the rest of my life proving I can be the man who deserves you. And if your family disowns you, if the business partners drop you, if the whole world thinks you've lost your mind, then I'll know I finally got my priorities straight. They married at the courthouse in Atlanta on a Tuesday morning. No family, no friends, just them and a judge who'd seen it all. Bradley wore a simple navy suit. Rochelle wore a white dress she'd bought off the clearance rack at Macy's. It should have felt anticlimactic. Instead, it felt perfect. The honeymoon was 3 days at a bed and breakfast in the mountains, away from phones, reporters, and everyone's opinions about their relationship. Just them, learning to be married, learning to trust again. I want to be different this time, he said on their wedding night, hands gentle on her growing belly. Then be different. What followed was the most tender intimacy either had ever experienced. Not the desperate passion of new love, but the careful worship of two people choosing each other despite their fears. He touched her like she was made of something precious but not fragile. She responded like a woman who finally felt safe enough to be completely vulnerable. This time when he loved her, it was worship without question, reverence without doubt. She would tell their daughter years later. Your father chose trust over fear that night. He chose us. But fairy tales don't end at the altar, and trust is rebuilt one day at a time. 3 months into their marriage, Rochelle discovered something that made her question everything again. The notifications on her phone seemed innocent enough until she realized every app, every location, every call was being monitored. He said he trusted her, but his actions told a different story. Old habits die hard, and some men don't change. They just get better at hiding their control. Would you marry someone you couldn't fully trust yet? Sometimes love means betting on potential. Have you ever made that gamble? Share your thoughts in the comments and hit subscribe because next week we discover that control wears many faces and love isn't always one of them. Control wears many faces, love, protection, concern. But underneath, it always has the same hunger to consume. The pregnancy glow everyone talked about felt more like a prison sentence. Not because of the baby, Rochelle loved feeling life grow inside her, but because of how Bradley's love was slowly suffocating her. It started small. Suggestions that became expectations that became rules. Maybe you shouldn't drive so much. Stress isn't good for the baby. Do you really need to see your friends this week? You look tired. I hired a grocery delivery service. No need for you to be on your feet in those crowded stores. Each restriction came wrapped in concern, delivered with a kiss and a hand on her growing belly. How do you argue with someone who claims to be protecting you? The mansion felt different now that she lived there. Beautiful still, but the walls seemed closer the windows smaller. She'd gone from visitor to resident to something else entirely, a precious object kept safely behind glass. "I miss my job," she told him one evening over dinner. "Why would you want to go back to cleaning houses when you're married to me?" "Because it was my job, my independence, my choice." He reached across the table, took her hand with that gentle smile that used to make her heart race. Now it made her nervous. "You don't need independence anymore. You have me." That's when she realized the difference between support and suffocation. Support makes you stronger. Suffocation makes you disappear. The phone monitoring was the last straw. She discovered it by accident, noticing her battery drained faster than usual. A tech-savvy friend from her old neighborhood showed her the tracking software hidden in her apps. "Girl, he's watching your every move," her friend Keisha said, scrolling through the data. "Where you go, who you call, how long you stay. This is some serious surveillance. He says he worries about me. Worry doesn't need GPS coordinates and call logs. Control does." That night, Rochelle confronted him in his office. Same room where she'd told him about the pregnancy. Same chair where he'd questioned paternity. But this time, she wasn't the one on trial. "Explain this," she said, showing him the monitoring software. He didn't deny it, didn't even look embarrassed. "I need to know you're safe. Both of you." "Safe from what?" "From anything that might hurt you. Anyone who might take advantage of you. Any situation that might. Any situation where I make my own choices." His jaw tightened. There it was, the real Bradley Whitmore, the one who'd driven his first wife away. The one who believed love meant ownership. "I'm protecting my family by treating your wife like a prisoner, by making sure nothing bad happens to what matters most to me." The casual possessiveness in his voice, "what matters most to me," made her skin crawl. Not who, but what. Not a person with agency, but a possession to be guarded. That night, for the first time since their wedding, they slept in separate beds. The next morning, she found her car keys missing from her purse. "You left them on the kitchen counter," Bradley said when she asked, handing them over like he was doing her a favor. "I moved them somewhere safe." But they both knew the truth. He'd taken them, tested her reaction, seen how much control she'd accept before she pushed back. The call from her doctor should have been routine, just a regular checkup appointment. But the tremor in Dr. Martinez's voice told her everything she needed to know. "Mrs. Whitmore, I need you to come in immediately. There are complications with your pregnancy. When does protection become prison? How do you know when love has turned into control?" Share your warning signs in the comments below. And subscribe, because what happens at that doctor's appointment will test everything they think they know about love, sacrifice, and what it really means to fight for your family. She thought the worst thing that could happen was losing the baby, until she realized he was hoping she would. Dr. Martinez's office felt colder than usual. The ultrasound machine hummed quietly in the corner while Rochelle lay on the examination table, Bradley sitting in the chair beside her like a statue. His face showed nothing, not worry, not fear, not even curiosity, just blank indifference that chilled her more than any diagnosis could. "The baby's heart rate is irregular," Dr. Martinez said, pointing to the monitor. "And your blood pressure is dangerously high. We're looking at potential preeclampsia." Rochelle's hand went instinctively to her belly. "What does that mean?" "It means we need to monitor you very carefully. Bed rest, stress reduction, frequent checkups. If it gets worse." The doctor didn't need to finish. They all knew what worse meant. "How much bed rest?" Bradley asked, and something in his tone made Rochelle look at him sharply. "Complete. No work, no stress, minimal activity until we see improvement. And if there's no improvement?" Dr. Martinez glanced between them, clearly uncomfortable with Bradley's clinical detachment. "We'd have to consider early delivery, which at 28 weeks would be extremely risky for the baby." That's when Rochelle saw it, a flash of something in Bradley's eyes that made her blood run cold. Relief. For just a second, her husband looked relieved at the possibility of losing their child. The drive home was silent except for the sound of her world crashing down. Not because of the diagnosis. She'd fight any medical condition to save her baby. But because of the growing realization that she was fighting alone. "You seem calm about this," she said as they pulled into the driveway. Panicking won't help anything. Neither will acting like you don't care. He parked the car, turned to face her. Of course I care. Do you? Because for a minute back there, you looked like you were hoping the doctor would say we might lose the baby. The mask slipped completely then. Instead of denying it, instead of reassuring her, Bradley Whitmore said the words that ended their marriage before it really began. Maybe it would be for the best. The slap echoed through the garage. Rochelle's hand stung, but not as much as her heart. Get away from me. Rochelle, wait. I said get away from me. She stumbled out of the car, into the house, up the stairs to what used to be their bedroom. Behind her, she could hear Bradley calling her name, but it sounded distant, unreal, like hearing someone shout from underwater. That night, alone in the master bedroom while he slept in the guest room, Rochelle made a decision that would change everything. She pulled out her phone, the one he'd been monitoring, and started making calls. First to her friend Keisha, who drove over immediately with a lawyer's business card. Then to her old landlord, who confirmed her apartment was still available. Finally, to Dr. Martinez's after-hours line, asking about switching her care to a hospital closer to her old neighborhood. You leaving him? Keisha asked, helping her pack a small bag. I'm saving my baby. If that means leaving him, then yes. What if he tries to stop you? Rochelle looked at her reflection in the mirror, belly round with life, face set with determination. Let him try. The contractions started at 3 a.m. Not the gentle practice one she'd been having for weeks, but sharp, urgent pains that doubled her over. By the time the ambulance arrived, she was hemorrhaging. As they loaded her into the ambulance, Bradley finally showed emotion, panic, fear, desperation. But it was too late for all of that. Save my baby, she told the paramedic, gripping his hand with strength she didn't know she had. At the hospital, as doctors rushed around preparing for emergency surgery, her phone buzzed with a text from Bradley. Me or the baby? What would you do if the person you loved most became your biggest threat? When the father of your child stops fighting for both of you? Tell me in the comments. And subscribe because Rochelle's answer to that text will destroy his empire and save her soul. Some messages can't be unsent, some words can't be unspoken, and some choices reveal exactly who someone really is. The delivery room became a war zone. Machines beeped frantically, doctors shouted medical terms that sounded like a foreign language, and Rochelle fought the hardest battle of her life. Not just for her baby, but for both their futures. We're losing her, someone said, and she didn't know if they meant her or the baby. Through the chaos, through the pain that felt like being split in half, she heard her phone buzz. The nurse, thinking it might be important medical information, read the message aloud. Me or the baby? The room went silent except for the sound of machines. Even in the middle of a medical emergency, everyone understood what they'd just heard. A father asking his wife to choose between herself and their child. Dr. Martinez looked up from between Rochelle's legs, her face a mask of professional fury. Did he just? Yes, Rochelle said through gritted teeth. He did. The nurse stared at the phone like it was a weapon. Ma'am, do you want me to respond? Rochelle felt another contraction rip through her, but this time, instead of weakness, it brought clarity. Perfect, crystalline clarity about exactly who Bradley Whitmore really was and exactly what she needed to do about it. Yes, type this. I choose us both, and I choose a life without you. The delivery took 3 more hours. 3 hours of fighting for every breath, every heartbeat, every chance at life. When her daughter finally emerged, tiny, purple, barely breathing, the room erupted in activity. She's alive, Dr. Martinez announced. Premature but alive. Rochelle collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted but victorious. She'd done it. They'd both survived. That's when Bradley burst through the delivery room doors, still wearing his pajamas, face wild with panic and something else. Something that looked almost like disappointment when he saw the baby breathing. Is she alive? Rochelle said firmly. We both are. No thanks to you. He approached the bed cautiously, like she was a dangerous animal. Rochelle, about that text. Don't. Her voice was quiet but deadly. Don't you dare try to explain that away. The nurse, who'd been quietly preparing paperwork, pulled out an envelope from her bag. "Mrs. Whitmore, you asked me to give you this when the baby was born." Rochelle took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were divorce papers, already signed by her lawyer. She prepared them days ago, hoping she'd never have to use them. But Bradley's text had made the decision easy. "What is that?" Bradley asked, though his face said he already knew. "Your answer. You asked me to choose between myself and our baby. I chose both, and I chose freedom from a man who would force a mother to make that choice." She held the papers out to him. When he didn't take them, she let them flutter to the floor. "Rochelle, please. Get out. She's my daughter too." "Then you should have acted like a father instead of a man, counting the cost of commitment." Security escorted him from the room while their daughter, barely 4 pounds but breathing on her own, lay in her arms like proof that some things are worth fighting for. The paternity test results he demanded so desperately arrived the next morning. When he read them, 99.9% match. His face went white. Not because the baby wasn't his, but because now he knew for certain what he'd thrown away. Have you ever found strength you didn't know you had? When did you realize you were stronger than your circumstances? Share your story in the comments and subscribe because justice has a name and it's about to be served. Sometimes the universe delivers justice through custody courts, prenatal agreements, and evidence that powerful men forgot they were creating. The courthouse steps felt different this time. Not like the place where she'd married Bradley 18 months ago, full of hope and second chances. Now, they felt like the steps to freedom, with her 3-month-old daughter Harmony sleeping peacefully in her carrier. Yes, Harmony, not Destiny. That was her older daughter's name. This baby, born from chaos and claimed by courage, deserved a name that reflected what she'd brought to their lives. Peace after the storm. "Mrs. Whitmore, are you ready?" her lawyer, Patricia Chun, asked. "It's Ms. Evans now." And yes, I'm ready. The custody hearing had attracted media attention, not because Bradley was famous, but because the story was irresistible. Billionaire forces wife to choose between herself and baby. Wife chooses both and takes him for everything he's worth. Except that wasn't quite true. Rochelle hadn't taken him for everything. She'd taken enough to secure her daughter's futures, and not a penny more. Inside the courtroom, Bradley sat with his team of expensive lawyers, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 3 months. When their eyes met, she felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even pity. Just the calm certainty of a woman who'd escaped a burning building and was finally breathing clean air. "Your Honor," Patricia began, "my client isn't seeking revenge. She's seeking protection for herself and her children from a man whose idea of love is control, whose response to crisis is abandonment." The evidence was devastating. Phone records showing the monitoring software. Text messages proving his controlling behavior. Medical records documenting her stress-induced complications. And finally, the recording the delivery room nurse had made of his infamous text. "Me or the baby?" Patricia played the audio for the court. Those 4 words tell you everything you need to know about Bradley Whitmore's priorities. Bradley's lawyers tried to paint him as a concerned husband driven by fear. But when the judge heard testimony from Dr. Martinez about his reaction to the pregnancy complications, how he'd seemed relieved at the possibility of losing the baby, the case was over. "Mr. Whitmore," Judge Harrison said, "I've been on this bench for 22 years. I've seen men abandon their families for younger women, for money, for fame. But I've never seen a man ask his wife to choose between her life and their child's. That level of selfishness is beyond my comprehension." The settlement was fair but firm. Full custody to Rochelle, with supervised visitation rights for Bradley, if he completed anger management and parenting classes. Child support that would ensure both girls could go to any college they wanted. And something else, something that surprised everyone, including Rochelle herself. "I want to establish a foundation," she told the judge, "for women escaping controlling relationships. I want it funded by Mr. Whitmore's estate, and I want to run it myself." Bradley's face went white, not because of the money, he had plenty, but because she was taking his weapon, his wealth, and turning it into her shield. The foundation launched 6 months later. The Harmony Center for Women's Independence, named after the daughter who taught her that sometimes you have to fight for peace. Located in Savannah, serving women throughout Georgia and Florida. When reporters asked if she regretted marrying Bradley, her answer became the headline that defined her. I regret trusting him, but I don't regret my daughters. Some mistakes give you exactly what you need. What does victory look like when you've lost everything but gained yourself? How do you turn your worst experience into your greatest strength? Tell me in the comments what you would build from the ashes of your old life. Subscribe because next week, we see Rochelle 5 years later, and her life will surprise you. She could have taken his money and disappeared. Instead, she chose to stay and show other women what victory looked like. 5 years after that nightmare in the delivery room, Rochelle Evans stood in front of the Harmony Center's newest location, watching construction workers put up the sign. Not Rochelle Whitmore. She'd legally changed back to her maiden name the day her divorce was final. Some identities you were temporarily, others you reclaim. Mama, is this where you help the sad ladies? 12-year-old Destiny asked, adjusting 5-year-old Harmony's backpack. I help ladies who forgot how strong they are remember their power, Rochelle corrected gently. The center had helped over 3,000 women in 5 years. Women fleeing abusive marriages. Single mothers fighting for custody. Teenagers aging out of foster care with nowhere to go. Each one walked through those doors broken. Most walked out whole. Ms. Evans, a young woman approached hesitantly. I'm Sarah Mitchell. I have an appointment. Rochelle recognized the signs immediately. Designer clothes that couldn't hide the fear in her eyes. Expensive makeup that couldn't cover the bruise on her wrist. Careful posture of someone used to walking on eggshells. Come in, Sarah. Let's talk. The story was familiar, but no less heartbreaking. Wealthy husband. Controlling behavior disguised as love. Isolation from friends and family. The slow, systematic destruction of self-worth that happened so gradually you didn't notice until you'd forgotten who you used to be. He monitors my phone, Sarah whispered. Tracks my car. I had to tell him I was getting my nails done just to come here. But you came anyway. That took courage. I don't feel courageous. I feel scared and stupid and alive, Rochelle finished. You feel alive. That's the first step. That afternoon, Rochelle stood in her office, the same building where Bradley's country club used to exclude people like her, looking at photos on her wall. Pictures of women who'd graduated from their programs. Wedding photos from healthy relationships. College graduation shots. Business openings. Proof that healing was possible. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, the man who'd been patiently courting her for the past 2 years. A teacher at Destiny's school, single father of twin boys, the kind of man who brought flowers on random Tuesdays and never asked where she was or demanded access to her phone. Dinner tonight? I'll cook. Kids welcome as always. She smiled, typing back. We'll be there. That evening, watching Marcus teach Harmony how to flip pancakes while his boys played video games with Destiny, Rochelle felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. Peace. Real, genuine, uncomplicated peace. You're happy, Marcus observed, sliding an arm around her waist. I am. Good. You deserve it. The simple acceptance in his voice. No jealousy, no possessiveness, no need to own her happiness. Reminded her daily what healthy love looked like. Later, after the kids were asleep, she found the letter that had arrived that morning. From Bradley, written from his rehab facility in California. The third one this year, each more desperate than the last. I've changed, this one read. I'm different now. The girls need their father. You need. She stopped reading and filed it with the others. Unanswered, because some bridges you burned completely, and some doors you lock forever. Her phone rang, the center's emergency line. A woman's voice, terrified and urgent. Please, I need help. He found out I called. He's coming home soon and... What's your address? Rochelle was already reaching for her keys. I'm on my way. Because this was her life now. Not the fairy tale she'd once dreamed of, but something better. A purpose built from pain, strength forged from survival, love that empowered instead of imprisoned. How do you turn trauma into triumph? What would you build from your worst experience? Share your story in the comments. Subscribe because some endings are just beginnings in disguise. The body she once offered as sacrifice now created life by choice. The ultimate testament to what happens when love sees dignity instead of desperation. The hospital room looked different through experienced eyes. 5 years after Harmony's traumatic birth, Rochelle stood in the same hallway where she'd almost lost everything. But this time, she was there to save someone else. The woman in bed looked exactly like she had that night, scared, alone, fighting for her life and her babies. But this wasn't just any woman. This was Sarah Mitchell, the same scared wife who'd walked into the Harmony Center 6 months ago. "How is she?" Rochelle asked Dr. Martinez, who'd become more friend than doctor over the years. "She'll live. Baby too." But it was close. If she'd stayed with that husband another week. Rochelle nodded, understanding perfectly. Sarah's husband had escalated when she'd finally filed for divorce. The beating that put her in the hospital at 34 weeks pregnant was his final attempt to maintain control. "She's asking for you," a nurse said. Sarah looked tiny in the hospital bed, but her eyes held something that hadn't been there 6 months ago: determination. "Did we make it?" she whispered. "Both of you. You're both fighters." I used your words. When the pain got bad, when I thought I might not make it, I remembered what you said: some battles you fight for yourself, some for your babies, but the most important ones you fight for both. Rochelle squeezed her hand. "You remember what comes next. Healing, getting strong, building the life my daughter deserves." That's right. Walking home that evening, Rochelle reflected on how much had changed. The scared housekeeper who'd once cleaned Bradley's mansion was now the director of the state's most successful women's advocacy program. The woman who'd been forced to choose between herself and her baby now helped other women make empowering choices every day. At home, she found Marcus helping Harmony with homework while Destiny practiced violin. Normal family chaos that felt like a miracle every single day. "How was your day?" Marcus asked, kissing her cheek. "Save a life. Maybe two. Good day then." That night, after the kids were in bed, Marcus found her in their bedroom. Their bedroom, in the house they'd bought together, with both their names on the deed and no monitoring software on her phone. "I have something for you," he said, pulling out a small box. Her heart stopped. In all their years together, he'd never pressured her about marriage, never pushed for more than she was ready to give. But the ring box in his hands looked serious. "Marcus, before you panic," he said, laughing, "it's not what you think." "Well, not exactly." Inside the box was a key. "It's to the beach house, the one we looked at last month. I put an offer in. For all of us. Destiny, Harmony, the twins. A place where we can build something together." She looked at the key, then at this man who'd proven every day for 3 years that love could be patient, that partnerships could be equal, that commitment didn't require surrender. "Are you asking me to?" "I'm asking if you want to build a life with me. No contracts, no monitoring, no conditions. Just partnership between equals who choose each other every day." The key felt warm in her palm. Not a cage this time, but a door to possibilities she was finally brave enough to want. "Yes," she said. "Let's build something beautiful." What would your answer be to love that honors your independence while offering partnership? Tell me in the comments what your ideal commitment looks like. Subscribe because next week we see Rochelle's ultimate triumph, and it's not what you think. 5 years later, she stood in the same hospital where she'd almost lost everything, but this time, she was there to save someone else. The call came at midnight on a Tuesday. Rochelle recognized the desperation immediately. She'd heard it in her own voice once upon a time. "Please, I need help. I'm at Savannah General. Room 347. I don't have anywhere else to go." The voice belonged to Jennifer Walsh, a woman whose husband had put her in the hospital with a ruptured spleen and a broken spirit. But Jennifer wasn't calling for medical help. She was calling for something harder to give and more powerful to receive: hope. Rochelle arrived to find Jennifer exactly where she'd once been, broken physically but not spiritually, battered but not beaten. The bruises would heal. The question was whether the woman underneath would remember how to fight. "I left him," Jennifer whispered. "Finally left him, but I'm scared I'll go back." "Why would you go back?" Because I don't remember who I was before him. I don't know how to be alone. Rochelle sat in the chair beside her bed, the same type of chair where Bradley used to sit, counting the cost of commitment. But this time, someone was counting courage instead. You're not alone, and you're not broken. You're Jennifer Walsh, mother of two, kindergarten teacher, woman who survived 18 years of hell and still had the strength to walk away. That's not broken. That's heroic. 6 months later, Jennifer stood at the podium of the Harmony Center's annual gala, telling her story to a room full of survivors and supporters. Her ex-husband was in jail. Her children were in therapy. Her life was her own again. Rochelle Evans saved my life, Jennifer said. Not by rescuing me, but by reminding me I was worth saving. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. In the audience, Marcus held Harmony on his lap, while Destiny beamed with pride for her mother. Their blended family, imperfect, complicated, beautiful, proof that some endings lead to better beginnings. After the gala, Rochelle found herself back at Savannah General for a different reason. Marcus had been in a car accident. Minor, but enough to require overnight observation. As she sat beside his hospital bed, holding his hand while he slept, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. 7 years ago, she'd been willing to sacrifice everything for someone else's comfort. Tonight, she was choosing to stay beside someone who'd never asked her to sacrifice anything for his happiness. You awake? Marcus mumbled, squeezing her hand. Yeah, just thinking. About what? About how sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best thing that ever happened to you. The girls, the center, you, all of it. He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her palm. I love your origin story. My what? Every superhero has an origin story. Yours just happens to involve a billionaire, a delivery room, and the bravest choice anyone's ever made. The next morning, walking out of the hospital with Marcus fully recovered, Rochelle saw a familiar figure in the parking lot. Bradley Whitmore, older now, grayer, watching from beside a rental car. Their eyes met across the asphalt, and for a moment, she saw the man he might have been if fear hadn't made him cruel. He nodded once, acknowledgement, maybe even respect, then got in his car and drove away. She never saw him again. That afternoon, a reporter asked her the same question they'd been asking for 7 years. Do you regret marrying Bradley Whitmore? Her answer had evolved but never changed. I regret how it ended, but I don't regret how it began me. So what would you do if someone saw your worth before you believed in it yourself? Would you run, or would you build something that lasts? Comment below with what you would have done in Rochelle's place. Hit that like button if this story touched your heart. Subscribe for more stories that make you feel, think, and maybe even heal a little. And remember, the most powerful love doesn't rescue you from your life. It recognizes the strength that was there all along. Your life, your rules, your choice.